Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion. I have not had time to prep a intro or anything for this, but we decided to get together for an impromptu podcast to talk about the Netflix release of Neon Genesis
Hooray.
Evangelion,
The day is finally here.
Oh boy. Yep, you heard it on the podcast yesterday or whatever this morning that by the time you hear it will be out on Netflix, and then we decided, it's out on Netflix, let's record another podcast.
Well, the reason why we decided to do that is
the discourse has begun.
But perhaps not the discourse we were anticipating.
What we thought it would be.
I don't know about y'all, but I feel like the only actually good thing that's come out of the discourse is people bringing to light
the N64 game.
Yes, the Neon Genesis Evangelion N64 game, which has all of the iconic music from the anime, but rendered through the N64's MIDI sound chip. So if you've ever wanted to listen to Calm Suster Todd, but played with the pan flutes from Paper Mario, then y'all should definitely check that out.
It's real good.
I have not seen that come up.
Oh, it's very good.
But what I have seen come up is Netflix doing what Netflix does to anime.
Not supporting it very well.
I don't want to make this podcast just dunking on Netflix and saying they ruined everything.
We do it all the time already, my dude.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, I gotta really question Netflix's decision to hold on to Evangelion for 25 years before releasing it in one full batch on Netflix. I guess they were really holding out for the rebuild movies, but just timetable didn't work out.
At least from what I saw, they did not put the Netflix original tag on it like we were fearing. So that's one positive, I guess.
I mean, I wasn't really fearing it as much as just like, man, wouldn't it be funny?
I feel like
if they had the audacity to actually do that.
I feel like they could absolutely not get away with that part.
Yeah.
But what can get away with, Joe?
You think Gynax still has lawyers worth a damn?
So, yeah, no, Gynax doesn't. They'll take whatever they can get in 2019. But anyway, so we're going to hit the highlights here of some of the concerns that have popped up.
Just to be noted, I haven't had time to watch on Netflix. I'm going entirely by what you're telling me.
Yes. I also want to note, I have not even finished the series yet, so I am doubly going just by what you people are telling me.
Well, I have had
I've seen some tweets
to watch 1+ episode and do a few bits of my own research on it, and looking at some of the key stuff that people have been complaining about. So I will fill you guys in, and we'll see how this goes.
Sure.
But so number one, biggest thing that immediately came up that everybody saw was they removed "Fly Me to the Moon" as the ending song
for licensing purposes. Like when Eden to the East came to the West, they could only license the Oasis track for one episode.
Yes, I remember.
When Speedgrapher came to the US, they could not license Duran Duran for the opening and had to replace it entirely.
So, in all fairness, I can almost understand that there is probably some poor fucking intern at Netflix who was like tasked with like writing up the emails to like discuss rights, and was like, "Wait a minute, are you telling me this show has like 20 versions?"
Right, yeah.
Fly Me to the Moon?
Yes. So in case there was any question that it's a rights thing, they do still have the Fly Me to the Moon in the Netflix Japan version.
I assume that's a totally different sphere of rights, though.
Yeah, yes. I imagine that maybe it's potentially easier there for some reason or another.
Well, they may still have, right, but what I find interesting is, like, I'm assuming the rights to the actual song "Fly Me to the Moon" are not difficult to get. I mean, if Bayonetta can get it, then it must not be that hard.
Well, if Bayonetta can get it.
But, because Platinum doesn't have any money. Come on. Released prior to Nier.
Yeah, but Kamiya has clout, man. If Hideki Kamiya was like, "I want Fly Me to the Moon," could you say no to him?
Maybe not.
I think it must be the 100 different versions of it.
Yeah, so they did record the specific versions for the show that were all with with different actresses singing them, the different voice actresses, and once you get that involved, there's going to be all the Japanese mafia record labels.
I don't know. Maybe Netflix looked at Evangelion and it was like, oh, we should do the same thing. We should get our dub voice actors to also sing their own renditions.
Yeah, sure.
Of "Fly Me to the Moon."
That did not happen.
Still have the East track on Shinji's SDAT player.
Yeah, get Misato's dub VA to sing that track too.
I have not checked that yet, so that'll be something to look into. But yeah, I'm assuming. I mean, does this mean that Japanese record labels are more powerful than Netflix? Or does this mean Netflix just didn't care enough?
Netflix probably is. I mean, I'm sure they are involved with organized crime in some fashion, but
I mean,
probably not to quite the extent of.
I mean, I don't want to cast aspersions here, but honestly, my guess is Netflix probably just took the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
It's probably not a malice thing. It might not even be a laziness thing. I mean, okay, it probably is to some degree a laziness thing. It's probably just look, Neon Genesis Evangelion, as big as it is within the anime sphere, as big as it seems to have blown up on Twitter, is not Stranger Things or fucking... Actually, that's literally the only Netflix original I can think of off the top of my head.
Sure.
It's not
Daredevil question mark. I don't know.
Oh, Daredevil, right? Yes.
I mean, the point is it's not something Netflix can control every aspect of.
Right, but I mean, what I mean even more than that, it is not something that Netflix necessarily has a direct investment in seeing realized to its fullest potential.
Right. Remember when they bought the license, and Funimation put out those statements or whatever about how because they lost the bid for Ava, and they put this whole thing Netflix doesn't support their shows, we would support it to the fans. I
hate to say what's his name from Funimation is right, but
Fukunaga.
He was.
Fuck that guy.
Probably right on this one at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he also had an axe to grind, but apparently he was, right.
But, Funimation brought over the rebuild movies. They did go to lengths to get a lot of the original dub cast back, etc.
Yes, and we've noted on previous podcasts they kind of screwed over the original dubcast on this one, who very much wanted to even just audition for the parts, and it did not work out for them.
I mean, I think as somebody who has never listened to the original Evangelion dub, I can't really speak from an emotional standpoint here.
Right.
But, as somebody who has watched a lot of anime with what are often considered very iconic dubs, for example Cowboy Bebop or something, it does seem very weird, I guess, that Netflix felt this insistence to quote unquote leave its own mark on the show, I guess.
I think, again, this is going to come back to they probably didn't want, because they wouldn't have had the rights to the dub, they probably didn't want to put out the whatever cost or effort.
Who owns it anymore? Does ADV even exist anymore?
Didn't they eventually all fold into Sentai or whatever?
I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know how that works. But maybe that Netflix doesn't either and didn't care enough to find out. But I have a feeling that's probably more the case. I could be wrong on that. But
so what's next?
But yeah, just one more note on the dub. The acting seems fine from what I've seen.
I looked at some cast lists, or I skimmed the character sheet on Wikipedia and was yeah, these are voice actors.
And it was kind of the typical who's who of modern anime dub, work.
Yeah, so the acting seems fine, and I think the casting seems okay from what I've seen.
I don't think that was ever the problem with a new dub, right?
Yeah. I think where all the rest of these problems are going to be tied to is the actual localization and translation choices that have been made. So let's start with some easy ones. First of all, I found it interesting that Evangelion has the unique dual titles thing going on, and in not only did they choose to not use both titles, which I can understand that.
They're all in the eye catches in the show, right? Like,
yeah, I'm just saying, listed in the thing, it's a bit weird that they didn't choose the English titles, because if you're going to pick one, I'd figure you'd pick the English ones.
Those are the ones that are visually on screen, right?
Yeah, and then B, they decided to go with the Japanese titles and also localize them differently than what we've seen in the past, and also what's in the eye catches, because some of them are.
Yeah, I think the argument you can make here is
if it's a fully new translation, then right.
I guess what I was actually going to argue is, I suppose I question the validity of that as an excuse, because I guess for me, look, video games, especially to tie this to video games, that have been brought over from Japan have often been, translated somewhat erroneously, but I wonder if I guess people usually don't call out Evangelion episodes specifically by name, but I wonder if could be an aspect of brand confusion here, because
no, maybe
if you're talking about, you mean episode, fuck, dude, I can't remember any of the goddamn Japanese titles, so I can't really use an example here. But if you're like, episode 5, such and such, and you're like, don't you mean episode 5 something else? And I guess,
if it was never good for that because of the double title thing.
Well, yes.
Yeah, I think everybody does just kind of use the numbers generally. All I'm saying is, how do you not call episode 9 Both of You Dance Like You Want to Win? That's all I'm saying.
Okay, that is a good point to bring up.
Does it say that in the eye catch?
It does say it in the eye catch, but in the
there you go.
Yeah,
that's all I got, man.
But I'm just saying, why didn't they use that why didn't they use the English title then? Why did they have to?
With one, as long as they're sticking with one, whatever. Yeah, right.
That's fine. That.
Sure, this is but I agree with Jill. No, this is a petty point worth taking a stand on. I've put my foot down for pettier things in the past, so
we're gonna miss out on that one. We're gonna miss out on those women long for the touch of others' lips and thus invited their kisses. But anyway.
All right.
Just imagine if Netflix brought over Megalobox and they did not translate the title as
fine.
Something a dog never dies.
Mr. might drive a dog to kill, but will never break him.
Yes, I'm glad you can recall that just as easily as I can recall a certain legendary 1988 science fiction OVA.
Okay, well, we got that one in that reference in too, so we're good. Yes, so let's keep this thing moving, because we want to keep this one tight here. Other minor thing is, well, I guess this isn't really minor in a practical sense.
I don't think this is minor at all. I think this is a more worthwhile thing to bring up.
They did not show any of the on-screen text translated.
That's a major issue, I think.
This seems particularly egregious, because this is not just a localization choice. This is you're actively
a directorial choice.
Right, but what I mean is you're actively denying your viewer valid information that is being presented within the context of the show. That text is not
how do they do the recap episode then with all that text in the
right? Is that just unbroken Japanese for 10 minutes straight?
Yeah, they didn't. I didn't check the recap episode specifically, but in the first episode, all the white military documentary text is all untranslated.
As we talk about stuff like that, and how for example, Trigger would kind of go on to take that directing choice with stuff like Kill la Kill, and I guess even to an extent, Gurren Lagann does it a little bit as well, right? The text on screen is a very specific directorial choice. It is as much a part of the visuals and the storytelling as anything else in that show.
Right. And
this is not the difference between for example, not translating the Japanese street sign that says stop sign. There's an argument to be made about whether that is worth translating or not, but something as major as the diegetic text that is literally appearing, is literally hard coded into the shot.
Yes,
that seems a really questionable decision.
Yeah. Again, is this just laziness or is that a choice? I
guess I'm very curious. I actually, I would. Here's the thing. I would call them fucking wrong, but I would love to see an argument for not translating the on-screen text, I guess, because I am curious, like, is there actually
The
like an
rationale.
intentional rationale behind it?
I can't imagine there is. Like, what would it be other than we've decided this is
I
an
don't know,
acceptable
make it more
loss?
exotic, make it seem more Japanese, I guess. Like, ooh, look, there's mysterious information you don't get.
Right,
Which,
but
like,
if your whole point of localization is to simulate as best you can the experience of a native speaker, like a
right,
Japanese person watching, it's going to know what that says. So it's not like
yeah. I mean, I'm going to use this excuse to just give a shout out to the Yakuza games localization team because, like,
one of the
that
best.
is that is also a video game that does a lot of like on-screen text for like notable figures and like events, and like they make sure to translate that. And hell, they even make sure that the font fits the original like style, and like
Yep.
that has a notable and I think beneficial effect to a in our case a foreigner's understanding of the work.
Yep. So
That
whether it was
seems
a
like a
choice
mess.
or not, that's a big oversight, and will definitely makes the show more of a challenge to understand. But I mean, that is what it is, I guess. I
Uh-huh.
I want to swap these two things on the notes here.
Okay.
I think I want to talk about the swear words first.
We're starting to get into the weeds here, I think.
Yeah.
These are hey, if there is nothing the Glorio network is not good at, it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
not
yeah.
our
Kidding.
capability to get lost in the fucking weeds.
So they've chosen to basically pull out all the swear words in English, which you could make a
Okay.
case
I
for. But go
yeah,
ahead, Iro.
this is all stuff that's like I would expect to happen in a fresh localization, right?
Yes.
Like people are mad about the line in End of Evangelion, which where Shinji, in the dub Shinji says like I'm so fucked up, right?
Yeah. And he
Whereas
says,
in
I think,
Japanese it's something along the lines of like I'm the lowest or whatever.
yeah,
I don't speak Japanese. Point is, like, it's wild to me that people are mad that that got removed, that the line is changed because, as far as I recall, back in the day, people were mad about that line being "I'm so fucked up" because it was like adding a swear word to the line or whatever. And so it's
right.
like, is it just that people are like, there's 20 years of the mental image of what Evangelion is that's like being potentially shaken up here, and
Yeah. I
I feel
mean,
like a lot of cases that's what people are mad about.
yeah, I think, look, as somebody who has not finished the show and has, only watched the fight scenes from End of Evangelion, I would kind of echo your sentiment, Iro, that there is often a danger in these kind of works to almost ascribe a sort of immutable holy aspect to them, the to echo that one, meme of like, Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi shouting, the holy texts. Like, I think there is often a danger in like ascribing a little too much reverence in a particular interpretation of things,
Yeah,
and that is the thing. That is the thing. I don't want to imply that that old interpretation is not valid. I think,
right. Of course not. I'm just like
in fact,
the point is at some point you're quibbling over
yeah,
the dub's translation of the original or whatever.
right. And so that's why I think what we're trying to establish here in our discussion is that we're not like necessarily. I mean, the on-screen text thing is an entirely like that's a directorial choice.
That's
Something like
different.
this, I think we're not necessarily condemning it outright. We are kind of more speaking to the idea of this discourse that has surrounded it as like kind of missing the forest for the trees. Like there are things that are worth pointing out about how Netflix has handled Evangelion, and quibbling over like specific wording, I think, is
Yeah. Well, let's talk about then a more bizarre choice, which has a bit of a context we can talk about. And my personal favorite thing that I found the most amusing out of all of this. So all of the Evangelion pilots are referred to as, whatever child they are based on the order
First,
that they've been
second, third.
discovered.
Right.
So Ray's the first child, Asuka's the second child,
Right,
Shinji's
but
the third child.
in
right?
Japanese, this is consistently the first children, second children, third children in English, even though they're
Yes.
speaking Japanese. Yeah.
So
I never noticed that when watching.
The original dub, like, that went through. I seem to recall stories of them having a lot of arguments with Gainax that, like, yeah, like, we know you have your terms that you want us to use, like, we have to call them angels, it has to be called the Human Instrumentality Project, etc. But it's not going to be good if everyone's speaking English and we're calling these people the first children. Like, that doesn't play.
I actually tried to find the original primary sources for that, but I think it's so ancient that
I think it's a commentary track.
Again,
this
is what I said in the last fucking podcast about the Tsurumaki comments. Like, we're just we're speaking to fucking unsourced hearsay that we have no capability of actually properly referencing because the sacred texts have been lost.
No, this actually was true though, that this was a point of contention between Gainax and the dub production.
No, I definitely don't deny it. I wish we had. I wish
citation needed.
Right. What I'm saying here is I don't disbelieve you guys. In fact, I entirely believe what you were saying because I can totally believe that the localization team had to argue with the domestic Japanese team about some of their dumbass wording. That happens all the fucking time in Japanese video game localization. But I just wish that we could, like, post in the show notes, like, refer to minutes here to here in the commentary track of episode such and such on this specific DVD collection.
Well, regardless of what has happened in the past, I guess basically in the original dub, they did eventually convince them to let them use the grammatically correct first child, second child, third child.
And that's good.
Which was the correct choice.
I would not be able to take it very seriously if they were like, "Oh, the mysterious third children."
Well, like that's what they did in the Netflix dub.
Okay, so they actually say out loud like that in the dub?
Yes.
Oh man.
Why?
So like I'll give you the example sentence with the first one I heard because the episode I watched was episode 9. Both of you dance like you want to win because that's one of my favorite episodes. So that's the one I watched.
Good episode.
Dubbed. And the first time I heard it is when Asuka is at school in the beginning and she's like, oh, the first child is here. And she says, oh, the first children is here.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think this is why I think this is worth pointing out. Like, to any listener that thinks, oh, we seem to be flip-flopping a lot. I think we want to make it clear that we're not necessarily trying to come out with a specific stance here, but we were trying to have a discourse about how Netflix has handled the localization, is that I think this is definitely an area where, again, I think despite me literally going on a tangent about, we shouldn't ascribe too much like reverence to the old interpretation, that there's certainly a validity in like good localization knows when to push back against the original translation.
Right.
Like, I don't want to turn this into a tangent about how there are certain fucking, grognard dickheads on the internet who like think that a 1-1 translation is like a good localization.
It's always a push and pull between bringing the work to the watcher and bringing the watcher to the work.
Yeah, and I think that it is important for localization teams to bring up with the domestic team, hey, look, like, we respect the intent of your work, but like if we translate this one for one, it's not going to play with our audience. Like, it's going to come off as goofy and amateurish, in the way that like a lot of like old anime dubs were, not just because of the quality of the voice actors, but also because of like the quality of the translations themselves, leading to like weird, clunky terminology.
I'm going to be diplomatic and say that using the child instead of children is like 95% the correct way to do it. If you want to make a 5% case that of using the children for those people out there that feel like the translation,
I feel like the only case you can make is the only case you can make is that's how it is in the original.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Some terms are worth keeping because they are iconic and they evoke like a certain mystery and tone to them, right? Like, yes, like Human Instrumentality Project, or calling the bad guys angels. Like, there's always that push and pull. There are some terms that are definitely worth keeping, like, I'd hate to imagine like the version of Evangelion where like the dubs are like human instrumentality project. That's too many words. Let's just call it the bad man plot or something.
I'm gonna put another example in here. In the Fate series, their special move, like the prescribed term that they gave when dubbing the first anime is Noble Phantasm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And like in Japanese, the word is like precious tool or something. Like,
ugh.
yeah,
that's way lamer, right? Like, I mean,
good call on that one.
Yeah, like actually, I mean, I don't mean to go on this tangent here, but do they still use that same translation, or has the Japanese gone on to actually call them noble phantasms?
No,
as
like
well?
it's always the same word in Japanese. Just like,
okay,
and it's interesting because you can look at like the earliest fan subs of the first Fate anime that will say Hogu in the subs with translators note.
Yeah,
a precious tool.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. That is totally a case of like a way lamer translation as a result of it being literal.
Anyway,
yeah.
What's next on the docket?
Speaking of a precious tool, the single most biggest thing that's gotten people angry is related to Kaworu, who is a character that appears later in the series. That I don't want to get into the details because G has not watched the entire series.
Gosh, Kaworu, who's that? I've never heard that name before.
But I'm basically going to say that the controversy boils down to the age-old question of how do you translate the words koi and ski into English. And in the original dub, they were love, and they have now been changed to like.
Again, like I said, I think this is people quibbling over like subtext added in the translation rather than necessarily like ambiguity in the original language between things.
Again, as somebody who has not, look, as I've said before, because of cultural osmosis, I'm pretty damn well aware of Kaworu and his whole deal, just because, look, that's just how it happens. But I don't know all the context and I don't know all the details. So forgive me if I overstep my bounds here, but I guess the vibe I've always gotten is that, again, it is that feeling of people ascribing a lot of reverence to the original interpretation because it gave like a subtext and a representation to, like voices and demographics in anime fandom that perhaps had not felt like they had ever been addressed and represented
Which is not to say that subtext isn't there. Like, I would say it is there. Just at some point you're arguing over word choice.
And I guess it really. And again, I don't want to like castigate people for maybe reaching a little too far for some things. Like, I mean, look, there is a whole lot of discourse in certain corners of the anime fandom about like if Char and Amuro's relationship can be construed as queer or not, which I have plenty of thoughts about that. Yes, I have plenty of thoughts on the validity of that, but
I think this is a very different situation, but yes.
But yes. And my point is that I think fans have always wanted to find things that reflect them in the media and culture that they consume, and I don't think we ever want to imply that that desire is invalid.
We don't want to take anything away from anybody.
Right.
Yeah, I think those interpretations of Kaworu and Shinji's relationship are valid takes that can be supported by the subtext, but I don't think they are definitive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that is a fair take.
And so I would not begrudge anybody who wants to read it that way. I just don't think it's definitive enough where it necessarily merits outrage at this particular change. Because I mean, yes, like is is not as strong a word as love, but in the
the word used. Right. It was like the word used as I don't speak Japanese. This is just based on my understanding of context after having watched anime for a very long time.
Well, that clearly makes you an expert.
Oh God, I'm not an expert, but like my understanding is the word is like closer to like than a word specifically for romantic love. But
it's almost entirely context with Ski in particular, where
and I guess that's why I would even go as far as say, like, if again, don't want to say that those takes aren't valid, but I guess if you have issues with the subtext not being strong enough, I feel like that is more an issue to take with the original creators rather than necessarily the people whose job is to translate and localize it as best they can. I mean, I hate pulling that card of like, well, you have to look at the original creator's intention, but like,
right.
If that is a criticism you have with the work, I think that is a criticism more deservedly aimed at.
Here's the thing:
the creators rather than those who are tasked with interpreting it.
If you watch the scene, and I should bring up, so the like love thing is what really set people off, but when he says koi earlier, which is usually translated love, and they translated it as like my grace.
Right.
You're worthy of my
grace. That's a little more questionable.
So, that was suspect. I think the like love still has the same implication in the context of the scene, even if it's not technically as strong a word in English. If you're watching the scene, I don't think it changes your reading on what is going on between the two of them. But the your grace thing was dumb. I'll give him that.
Yeah, that is a weird. Again, I have zero context. Like again, I've seen and heard a lot, but with zero context.
There's no translating where that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
there's noting, like, I've never watched Evangelion dubbed. Like, I've only seen snippets.
Really?
I've only watched it. I've only watched the Japanese.
You're the only dude here who has watched it in English, Joe.
I've watched it both equally, basically, in both
right
Japanese. So I guess all of this is leading to this big question that we started touching on earlier of, with this show, it feels like, and I've heard this sentiment from people who actually translate Japanese for a living, they're getting the impression that whoever did the localization either knew nothing about Evangelion or was like intentionally not paying attention to the context of like the previous localization. And I think that's why people are mad, because like we said, people have developed this reverence for the terminology and the certain words and phrases that have now become, quotable and iconic over the past 25 years, which I can understand to a certain extent. But I do think there is, I think if that's going to be your priority, then you put more effort into getting the original dub. If your priority is to start with a clean slate, I think it is fair to let the team try to make a fresh interpretation on what the work is supposed to be. And I guess I don't think, I guess the question is this a good or a bad thing? Because I don't think there is a 100%.
I mean, sorry, go ahead, Zero.
I think back to like how we would get retranslations of old like Super Nintendo games, right? And how a lot of the like lines and stuff in those translations, even though they were not perfect translations, were beloved. And so
you can just say Final Fantasy VI.
So you can just say you spoony bard.
Right, you spoony bard, like stuff, you son of a Submariner, like stuff like Chrono Trigger. Like the funny example for me is Chrono Trigger, because all the advertisements for Chrono Trigger DS said "Good morning, Chrono," and then you get into the new translation and they do not say "Good morning, Chrono." But that's what I mean. Like, I think when there is this amount of reverence built up, it's a good idea to keep that in mind when making a new version. If like perhaps not let it guide your entire process, but it's worth understanding that that's there, that there's an expectation.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I kind of eventually echo your sentiment on this, Eero, that like, I know it sounds like a wishy-washy answer to be like kind of sit in the middle, but I think there really is kind of, like everything, there is a push-pull between like the original interpretation does hold a lot of value for people, like there is there is value to be found there, and that value is valid. And
multiple people have told me they will not be watched on Netflix because the original dub is not there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, man, if they put Fooly Cooly or Cowboy Bebop on Netflix and it was not the original dubs, I wouldn't watch those either. Like,
understandable, yeah.
There are interpretations that I consider valuable to me, so I can understand the viewpoint of people who treat the Ava dub that way. But but then there's also that, again, it's a push pull of like, if it was literally just a one for one like retranslation of the dub, but like just with different voice actors, then
why did you redub it?
Yeah, and I think there's always. I mean, maybe this was more of a common and prevalent thing back in the era of fan subs, like of like. I think fans have to remember that oftentimes the things that they consider valid are interpretations, right?
Yeah.
There is no canon, so to speak. A very like weirdly tiny, petty like example of this is in Gurren Lagann, right? Like the big super attack is known as Giga. Well, the official translation for it is Giga Drill Break, but before there was an official translation, before there was an official subbing of it that was released for home, media, every single fan sub interpreted as Giga Drill Breaker. And like that might seem like an extremely small, like insignificant difference.
Like
but
one of those has more headspace in the fan base than
like you ask anybody like, yo, what's the big drill attack called? Like everybody will tell you it's Giga Drill Breaker. Nobody, like a fucking cop, will tell you it's Giga Drill Break. And so I think it is a difficult thing to figure out because like. If they ever, I don't know, if they ever decided to like redub and retranslate Gurren Lagann, like maybe there's a little bit of expectation and hope that they would quote unquote do it correctly this time, right?
I recall a situation. This is a tangent. Dragon Ball Kai, when that was dubbed, there was an uncut version of that dub, and there was a cut version of that dub they produced for television. And in the uncut version, Vegeta says it's over 8,000 and crushes his scouter. And specifically for the new dub for the like edited version of Dragon Ball Kai, they had Chris Sabat scream, "It's over 9,000!" and crush the scouter.
Yeah, so I think Iro, that's to your earlier point where you can
do homage, right?
You can do the new dub, but still pay homage or respect the previous work in key areas, right?
Yeah.
Which maybe that's really the best way to go. I think I just keep coming back to the like, why did you even redub it at all? Because where I would poke kind of holes in the Super Nintendo game comparison, like those original,
those were bad translations.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say they're bad because if you read the stories behind them, they did the best they could with what they had to work with.
But they were bad translations.
So let's be honest, they're bad. They were bad translations, and the new ones are clearly improvements. Where, as with this one, I think it's a side grade. It's not. I wouldn't necessarily say it was better or worse from what I've seen. Yeah. Like the original dub is a pretty solid dub. Like it's. I mean, it's still feels maybe a little 90s-ish, but especially for the time, it was a very good dub. And even now, I think it holds up pretty good. So, I guess if that's not an option, though, what is the best course of action? And I think there is some validity to just starting with a clean slate. The risk being that you're going to piss everybody off, which is what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an unfortunate side effect, but of kind of the like, the necessity of like making media like easy to consume. I don't even mean in terms of like accessibility of like how easy it is to get the media, but like how easy is it to get what is the quote unquote definitive version of the media? I mean, I'll keep this short because we're already running a little long, but like, for example, like, Gundam's like localization in the West has always been weird because the rights to distribute in the West have been held by like 1,000 different fucking people.
There's a foreword in the novelization of the original Gundam from the original translator of when they first came out, who's like,
Yeah.
I got a lot of people getting mad at me because of how I romanized the names before there was any official versions.
Right. And so, like, you know, that is totally a case where it's like there are not half a dozen, that's too much, but there are quite a few different dubs and takes and translations on, like, the older Gundams, you know? Like, if you're older than Wing or G, like, you know, the chance of you having, like, a definitive, like, version, like, to legally acquire is, like,
Right.
kind of an awful quagmire. You know, it wasn't until, like, the Right Stuff, like, acquisitions that we have finally started to, like, approach something resembling, like, a definitive, you know,
Consistency.
interpretation of it.
Flipping through the audio tracks in the Gundam movie and, like, for the same scene and getting almost completely different.
Right. Like, you have, like, fucking 4 different audio tracks. It's a mess, and, like, I totally understand the desire, like, for better or worse. I think I can understand the rationale of Netflix's desire. Just like, look, we're just gonna have our one version, and that's it. You don't have to get confused. You go on Netflix, you're like, huh, I want to watch the show with the purple robot with the high top kicks. Like, there you go. It's right there. Watch it. Like,
I mean,
so I do understand that. I think at the same time, we are still entirely in our right to criticize, like, certain editorial choices they made.
I mean, they do also have the Japanese audio, so
right. Yes, so they do have that. But that's the thing. Then is the translation different? Like, is the subtitle for children?
It is a slightly different translation. I think some of the, like, I think I saw the Your Grace thing is still in there. Like, I was watching some of that. So
does Netflix do subtitle tracks or dub title tracks for their anime?
Oh, that's a good point.
No, that's what I was saying. The subtitle translation was different from what I saw.
Okay.
So it's not a dub title thing.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's good. I was going to say, you'd hope that Netflix could at least.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a very small snippet of the subtitle, so maybe there's, like, a chance I'm wrong, but I feel like that's something that would have popped up pretty quickly. But yeah. So I think that's going to do it then. We wanted to keep this tight, and we're already well over. But yeah, I guess I'll probably check out some more of it in the upcoming episodes for our podcast, because we still have, like, 40% of the show to watch.
Put your platinum collection on eBay while it's worth a lot.
Yeah, maybe I should start hawking that now. If anybody wants it, I have, like, the full big box set. It's not the condensed one. Like, I have, like, the individual volumes with the big, like, 6-inch wide box and everything. So hit me up on wherever you can hit me up on Twitter or whatever.
You can send a payment to Gel at theglorioblog.com.
Yeah. So we'll see. And I don't have a copy of End of Evangelion, so I might end up watching it on Netflix. We'll see how that goes. So that'll do it. We will catch everybody for the next episode of this podcast. I don't want to go through all the housekeeping on this one. Go to theglorioblog.com and you'll see all our stuff there, including all of our other podcasts and everything. So go check that out. And we'll catch everybody next time.